Welcome back to Anything But Mid, and I'm joined now by Rachel Phillips from KVIA. And Rachel, you have been covering one of the biggest stories in mid-major basketball. Unfortunately, it is a story that doesn't surround action on the court. It is surrounding the New Mexico State basketball team, and most recently, three former players, I should say, charged with a whole slew of charges. Give me the latest about what you know and what's going on with those players.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've been covering for nearly a year now. You think about that deadly shooting that happened off the court. That was November 19th. So we're coming up to basically a year. Obviously, these sexual assault and hazing allegations happened around December last year and February. That's really when they started to come to light, right before Valentine's Day. And look, it's been really interesting. This case by the Attorney General who's kind of been heading these charges. That's been going on for nearly 6-7 months, that investigation. And then just last week, we learned of what those charges are. And you're looking at, 11 felony sexual charges against Kim Aiken Jr. and then DeShondre Washington and Dr. Bradley have 13. And they really range from a slew of things, the worst being sexual penetration. That's the charge that really is the worst of all of them. It can be 9 years in prison just purely off that one charge. And then on top of that, they would have to register as a sex offender. So if that goes through court, goes to trial or whatever else, and they're found guilty of that specific charge, that's 9 years alone. But realistically, you're looking up to 24 or 27 years in prison, depending on how many charges. So just crazy to kind of think that could happen in a college basketball setting. You talked about it kind of at the start that we kind of expect to be covering what's happening on the court, but really last year when it comes to NMSU men's basketball, it's been everything off the court, which is really unfortunate for a historic program that, has gone to the NCAA tournaments on so many occasions and, knocked off UConn in the first round just a couple of years ago. And then the following year, you're dealing with all of this. So really just such a fall from grace from this program. And unfortunately now it's kind of still over the current program, even though it's a completely new roster and a new team in there.
Of course, all of this stemming from the hazing and sexual charges, allegations that ultimately led to the program shutting down last February. Where do you see as next? I know the former players are as of now going to be on trial separately, but what's the timeline for that?
So the Attorney General told me their intention is to try them together. And he said, obviously, that can change. Defense attorneys often want to make it separate cases because they can then pit people against each other. That's just naturally how law works. But right now, they intend to try them together. November 22nd is when we have that initial hearing here in Las Cruces. And all those three players are expected to be in attendance, which, of course, will be the first time that, we've seen them since they were on the court before all those hazing and sexual assault allegations came to light. So it'll be a really interesting moment, I guess, for Las Cruces to see how things play out. But yeah, that'll happen November 22nd. And then from there, it'll, start to decide whether we see a settlement taken, whether we see them go to trial. Obviously, all of that will take place. If it does go to trial, the Attorney General said they kind of want to see that happen. And probably just with timeline things, probably be within the next year. So this could still be playing out for a long time ahead of us if there's no settlements taken.
And it feels like it's been going on for so long already with that police report that really stemmed this back in February. But let's shift gears to the current program and where we're headed. Jason Hooten beginning his tenure, picking up his first win against a Division II program, then dropping 2 contests against D1 teams to kick off the season. Do you sense any difference? Brand new coaching staff, brand new team, any difference in the vibe around the program?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's completely different. They know they kind of have to be putting their best foot forward right now with everything going on. But when you talk to the players and the coaches, they say like they feel the support from NMSU community because nobody on this current team, this current roster, this current coaching staff was at all associated with NMSU last year. So it's, as much as all of this is going on in the background, like it truly has nothing to do with them. They're just playing for the same team that it happened to last year. So it's kind of one of those weird ones where you really can't like knock these guys because they're just going out there to play basketball and live out their dreams. And same for Coach Hooten. You know, he said as much as what's going on is a lot to deal with, at the end of the day, like their focus is basketball. And he said he feels, you know, such an honor to have been the guy tasked with turning this program around and bringing back that winning culture. And he is like, he's a great guy. Like, I think that's what everyone says about Jason Hooten when you meet him. He's just a nice guy. He's a family guy. The way he talks to his players, like it feels like a really good culture and vibe there at NMSU this year. And that's obviously what they needed after everything last year.
I've heard nothing but good things about Coach Hooten. Speaking with a couple of his former assistants in this past off season, it's interesting what you said about how he said that he takes pride in the fact that he was the one chosen to try to bring this program back to its proud tradition. What have been your impressions of the team on the court, getting to see them up close?
I mean, I think like I've spoken to Hooten about kind of what he expects from this team this year, and he's not setting expectations as to, you know, how many wins or where they can get postseason or anything like that. I think everyone is kind of aware that this is probably going to be a rebuilding year for the team. I mean, you're seeing it now in plenty of college teams that a lot of teams are bringing in a bunch of new guys and having to kind of rebuild. But I mean, this is everybody is new. Like that is not an easy feat. He's got one guy that came with him from Sam Houston, but otherwise, like he's meeting all these guys. They're all meeting each other. They're all saying that they're gelling really well together, which some of them said was kind of surprising because there is so many new people in one area in one small space. But still, it's hard. Like you're not only gelling with someone off the court and getting to know them as a person, but then on the court, I mean, you know how much chemistry can play a factor in basketball. So they're still kind of learning all those things. And then on top of that, they've had a bunch of injuries, and they had 2 NCAA waivers that haven't got approved yet. They're kind of up in the air right now. So their roster and their depth just isn't there this year. And Hooten's like very aware of that. And I think that's going to be a big thing that's going to come into play down the stretch. So, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to have an incredible season. I'd love to see that, you know, be the opposite way and it end up being a great season. But I think, you know, they're very prepared that this is a rebuilding year and they're going to put all the tools in place to try and get to where they want to be and really start building that legacy back. It's just going to take, you know, one game at a time.
And that seems like the motto at this point. Just take it one day, one game at a time. That's if you look too far down the road, that you're only going to be setting yourself up for to trip up later on. Where do you see kind of the program going? You know, I know you've mentioned multiple times how it's going to be a rebuilding year. Do you see that we can get back to NMSU getting back to the promised land?
I mean, I think that's why Jason Hooten took the job, is because he thinks he can get them back to that point. It's just going to take some time. I mean, I don't think it's fair to put expectations on them to go to an NCAA tournament this year. I'm sure every Aggie fan would love that to happen. I just think it's probably not realistic. You never know. You've heard of crazier stories, but I think it's just going to take some time. But he believes that he's the guy to do the job, and he said that from day dot when I first interviewed him when he signed with NMSU at his introductory press conference. He said, "I'm the guy." Like. And I believe that. And that, I mean, for any player coming to play for him to know that he thinks that he's the guy, like, okay, like you're going to believe and trust in that. And he, you know, had so much success at Sam Houston in a school that didn't have the same resources and money thrown at it that NMSU does. So you would expect him to kind of bring that winning culture right over to NMSU and with more resources be able to get them back on track.
Well, Rachel, had done such a great job covering all of the stories on the court, off the court surrounding the Aggie program, and certainly look forward to you continuing doing such a great job covering New Mexico State. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Hey.